Hey everyone, before we start today's video, I have a few announcements to let you guys know about. The first is I did an appearance on Crawl Space with Tim and Lance. That should be released next week, August 8th or 9th. So keep an ear out for that. On top of that, this video was shot on Wednesday, and this case had a lot of developments that happened late on Wednesday and into Thursday even. So I've tried to wait as late as possible on Thursday for you guys so I can get the most current information. I'm going to run Wednesday's video, but near the end, you'll see the red shirt version of me pop back up and wearing the Lord and Arts ball cap. And we will get you guys up to date on where the case is as of Thursday. Quite honestly, this thing's moving so fast, you might want to check on it again just in terms of news media on Friday, because I'm hoping for a significant development. Is this BrainScratch also a case cracked? Maybe pretty close, but we've got one very important lingering question. So with all that being said, let's get to it. Happy Friday, everyone. It's John Lorden here with a brand new BrainScratch for all of you. Hope you had a nice week and are looking to have a wonderful weekend. We've got a case today. It's one of these cases that we have video, but we still don't have the perpetrator. Some of those cases really drive me nuts. This is one that has happened recently. We're talking about a heart doctor that is biking to work. Another bicyclist comes up behind him, passes him, gets ahead of him, and turns around and shoots him several times. Terrible, terrible story. Let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to start at legacy.com so we can learn about Dr. Mark John Hausknecht. Mark was born on March 23, 1953 in Weymouth, Massachusetts. He earned his undergraduate degree at Cornell University and received his medical degree from Baylor College of Medicine in 1980, where he met his future wife. He completed his residency and fellowship at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Dr. Hausknecht was practicing cardiologist at the Texas Medical Center since 1987. Mark was driven by insatiable intellectual curiosity, but found relaxation through physical labor. He was a voracious reader, pilot, chef, do-it-yourself repairman, beekeeper, recycler, urban gardener, cyclist, and lover of music and the arts. It would not be unusual to find Mark solving physics problems or differential equations on vacation. Attracted by the concept that one's mind determines one's destiny, he became a practicing Buddhist in later years. Meditation was an essential part of his daily life. Mark loved his family and was proud of his sons. He was a leader by example, a teacher, a role model, and an inspiration to many. And that's one of the things that is probably the hardest for me to understand about this case after looking through it. There are so many articles, so many people that are talking about what a kind, smart man this was. He actually even helped our 41st president, George Bush Sr., at some point when he was having some heart issues. It's just really bizarre because right off the bat, it leaves you with the question of why would someone look to harm someone like this? I mean, just think of the ripple effect from it alone. This is a guy that is helping people that have cardiac issues. So what actually happened here? Let's start at the Washington Post. It was already nearly 90 degrees the morning of July 20th as Mark Hausknecht, dressed in blue scrubs, pedaled his bright yellow bike down Main Street toward work at Houston Methodist Hospital, as he did every day. He crossed a busy intersection just blocks from the heart of the Texas Medical Center, one of the largest medical complexes in the world. It was just then that another cyclist started catching up to him. The rider was clean-shaven, wearing a tan-colored ball cap, a blue polo, and khaki shorts, the chosen ensemble of any number of men in Houston on a hot day. But what stood out about him was the olive green backpack weighing him down. Police would soon describe it as fully loaded. And of course, we are going to look at some pictures and you'll get a better sense of that as we go forward. He followed the doctor for a couple more blocks. Just a half mile from his hospital, at about 8:45 a.m., he sped up on his tail. Then in front of a hotel, the cyclist passed him, turned around, and fired at 65-year-old Hausknecht. He was hit twice in the torso. The doctor fell to the ground immediately, Houston police said. This is the composite drawing, and we see they do have some information. Thin but fit, white male, 5'9" to 5'10". They're estimating that he's in his 30s. So this is the guy that we're looking for. We do have some clips of him on his bike as well that we're going to look at as we continue forward here. Continuing at abc13.com, a private ambulance passing by pulled over to help. I saw someone flagging us down and I said, "You know, something's wrong," said the EMT, who asked not to be named. We stopped, rendered aid to the best of our ability. We're limited when we have a patient loaded. We can't act as a normal ambulance at that point in time. We could pretty much just give first aid," said the paramedic, who jumped out to perform CPR and monitor the doctor's vital signs. The men said they did what they could, but tell us Hausknecht was not conscious. They described the scene at 6600 Main Street as oddly calm, with few people who realized what happened. They say several witnesses were on the phone with 911, and one man was on the ground comforting the doctor's head. The EMT and paramedics stayed with the doctor until Houston firefighters arrived on scene to take over. On the sidewalks, he was known as the pedaling physician. "I saw him almost every day driving on his bike," said Eric Estrada, a valet in the Texas Medical Center. "I'll have my headphones on passing by, and he'll give me a heads up every time he would pass by because he's hauling through, you know," said another worker. Police are still searching for the shooter, who they say was also on a bicycle. Investigators believe the gunman was following behind the doctor for 2 blocks before shooting him. So here is video posted by Daily Mail here. This is actually video that's taken, I believe it's a bus that has a camera on it. Here's the doctor, and that other line back there, I know it looks like it's pointing at the car, but it's actually pointing at where the other bicyclist is at that point, just beyond the car. So doctor is riding, and just keep an eye to the right of this car, and we'll see another bicyclist. Here he is. It's kind of tough to make out. This video is super blocky, and I haven't found a much better version of this video, unfortunately. But there were other cameras that caught the bicyclist as well. I believe they caught him as he was leaving. And we have one here at click2houston.com. So we get a much better sense of him here. And some people are even wondering if that is really a mountain bike or if it's actually a 10-speed. I'm really not so well versed on that stuff, but to me it does kind of look like a 10-speed. I think I'm even seeing the handles that are leaning downwards so you can get into like a lower racing position. And just the size of the wheels and everything, I'm not positive if this is a mountain bike. What I'm curious about, and I haven't seen yet, is anyone really do any type of analysis to try to identify the bike. As we did mention before, here you can see the backpack, and it is very, very full. I have to say that I've had a brain scratcher talking to me about this case. His name is Wes, and one of the first things we were kicking around is if you are planning on doing some type of assassination of this kind and doing it on bike, and that's your primary getaway, aren't you going to take the bare minimum with you so that you're light as possible so you can get away quicker? I think that is still the case, but I think what we've probably got in that backpack is maybe a change of clothes. I would be very surprised if he was carrying around a backpack that was that full and there was no reason specifically tied to the crime that he commits for that backpack to be on him. And I think that could be part of the reason why, quite honestly, we're not seeing a lot of footage of this bicyclist outside of within it's about 3 blocks that we're seeing footage from. And outside of that, it's like the guy literally disappears. As I smack the microphone. Let's jump back to the screen share real quick. I just want to kind of show you the area where this is all going down. So the hotel that the shooting happened in front of, I believe, is this Best Western here. And if we turn back this direction, that footage we saw from the bus is actually coming from this intersection way back here. The pictures that we're seeing on the Click Houston article are actually coming from a street right here. So it looks like he does his shooting in front of the Best Western. He continues on Main Street, and then he cuts a quick left onto this street that is named Southgate. And there's actually another picture that has been circulated of him where you can see him riding just to the left of these temporary buildings here. What's interesting about Southgate is if you continue going down Southgate here, the first thing that grabs my attention is there is a loading dock, and it looks like a parking area here. And typically around this type of stuff, I will see cameras. I think these are lights that are actually shooting up towards the building, but I'd be very surprised if there wasn't some type of video surveillance that was happening around here. This little square over here, yeah, I'm not positive if that's a camera or just some type of like rain spout or something in the building. But the other thing that's interesting about this street is if you continue forward on Southgate, you will actually get to a closed off section of road. Now, if you're on a bicycle, of course, you could pop right through that or just come up onto either of the sidewalks. You also have a few different options in terms of the direction that you can go in from here. So it's looking like there was some planning put into place. I would be very surprised if this person didn't scope out this particular area for their getaway. Another thing that makes me think that is if you look at this from the top view, you see that we've got tons of businesses and buildings all to the east and north and south. But if you head west, we get into residential very, very quickly. Talking about a normal work day this time of the morning, I bet there's several of these houses that are probably unoccupied at that point. Could it be that he scoped a particular house where he could go to change his clothes, possibly dump the bike or keep the bike? I'm not sure. I would assume that we would have heard that a bike was found if he dumped the bike, but I think at least a clothing change could have happened very quickly in this neighborhood, very close, but still, pretty difficult to find in terms of emergency response and any police that might start canvassing the area. I mean, especially he's got shorts, a polo shirt, a hat, and shoes. If he's even changing the shoes, I imagine he could do that clothing change within, a few minutes and be back off and just gone. Let's continue with the information here over at CNN.com. And here is a picture of Dr. Hausknecht with former President George Bush. It's a picture that's actually being shown a lot around this case now. Hausknecht lived in an upscale neighborhood not far from the Texas Medical Center in southwest Houston with his wife, retired emergency room physician Georgia Gigi, and I don't know how to say that last name. I'm going to guess it's C. I'm going to guess that H is silent. They have 2 adult sons, Matthew and Paul. Friends and neighbors pulled together to canvass the area where police believe the gunman may have fled, encouraging residents to look through their own security camera footage. Another interesting aspect is I don't think we've seen anything coming out of that neighborhood in terms of security camera footage. Once again, leading me to believe he wasn't wearing these clothes for long, probably changed his appearance very quickly. And then continued. Although, if they saw anything with a guy on a bike even similar to this, I would like to think that they submitted that to the authorities. And in particular, if he was on a bike like this and still had a backpack, even if his clothing didn't match, unless, he tried to disguise it, maybe turned the backpack backwards on his body so it was in front so he could act like it was just part of his body weight or something. I don't know, but I haven't seen anything coming out of the neighborhood in terms of footage. 2 frames obtained by CNN show the suspected gunman cycling on Southgate Boulevard near the site of the attack, but it's still unclear whether these are images from before or after. Based on the information I've seen, it's like 90% sure. I'm 90% sure that these are actually from after the attack. Another thing that's interesting about that I don't know neighbors could be considering is he might have done this ride a few times before. Maybe in the days or possibly even weeks leading up to doing this. So I'd be checking video footage for anyone that was riding by on a bike similar to that and trying to get that into the hands of law enforcement. Over at ABC13.com, we hear a little bit more about Dr. Hausknecht. Dr. Kevin Lissman was a medical partner with Hausknecht for 15 years. Mark never had an enemy, Lissman said. He was very quiet and very humble, just the kind of guy who would take care of anybody at the drop of a hat. Lissman said the practice is stunned by the news. When you have a partner in a practice, they're like family, Lissman said. Whenever you have somebody taken away so tragically, it's like ripping a family member from you. And I'm telling you guys, there's comment after comment. I can't even go into them all here. There are so many people speaking up about what a nice and caring person Dr. Hausknecht was. Back to CNN.com. Chief Art Acevedo, we have a quote from the police chief here. "There is a high probability the doctor was targeted," the chief said in a tweet from Houston police. The FBI's Houston Bureau is helping city police with the investigation. And here we got a good close-up. Once again, I'm telling you, so much of this footage is so blocky, though. It's really, really hard to make out. And some interesting pictures here. So this is from that main intersection that I was showing you that was down the way. You can see there's an underpass. This is the overpass, I guess you would call it. You could see some of the bridges over here to the left. The green circle is Dr. Hausknecht. The red circle, of course, is the suspect. And I know the story I read to you made it sound like the suspect actually passed Dr. Hausknecht at the Best Western, but that's not what these pictures show. These pictures show that he actually passes him in this intersection. So he got some distance ahead of him. I would imagine he probably made that distance. I don't know if he got off the bike, but so he could at least stop to line up his shot. He probably had a little bit of distance ahead of Dr. Hausknecht. It's a shame that Dr. Hausknecht, he probably had no idea what was going on, just saw some guy stopped ahead of him. So yeah, I just wanted to show you because these pictures definitely tell a bit of a different story from what we were reading at the Washington Post. Over at CBSNews.com, autopsy results released this week show Hausknecht was shot 3 times. There was some dispute. I really didn't go into it too much. Some articles were saying he was shot twice. This one is clear. This is coming from the autopsy. Shot 3 times, including in the head and torso. At a news conference on Wednesday, Acevedo said investigators are still trying to determine a motive, and they are pursuing various leads and tips. Acevedo called the case perplexing, truly a whodunit. We're confident and we're hopeful that with the help of the community, we're going to end up identifying this individual and we'll be able to get justice for the family and, most importantly, justice for this community. And when I was first looking at this case, when you have footage like that, my first instinct is, yeah, of course, you've got footage of the guy. Something's going to crack in this. We know what clothes we're looking for. Maybe his friends have seen him wear those clothes before, and they're going to call in a tip. We know a specific bike we're looking for. Did this guy buy this bike recently? Is there a salesman that remembers selling a bike like that? Or is this a bike this guy had for a long time? Is it something he used all the time? Would other people have seen him on that bike? There are so many angles to this case when you have pictures of a suspect like this that should help break it. But I've also got experience with doing the stories I do on this channel. And quite honestly, even though we have footage, it doesn't always break the case. It needs someone else. It needs someone out there to do the right thing, to step up, to share that piece of information, that thing they might not think is all that important, that certainly pulls this case together. I don't know. It's yet another tough one on the Lord and Arts channel. Welcome to BrainScratch on Friday. To another article at CNN.com. Family and friends gathered to honor famed Houston cardiologist Dr. Mark Hausknecht on Saturday, less than 2 miles from where he was shot to death in broad daylight last week. More than 800 people filled the First Presbyterian Church of Houston. In 8 days since Hausknecht was killed by a gunman on a bicycle, no arrests have been made, despite the suspect being recorded on surveillance cameras in the area. And that is certainly always frustrating. He was found just feet away from a construction site where about 500 workers were on duty at the time he was killed, according to a construction manager at the site. We couldn't hear anything because we have stuff here that's louder than guns, the construction manager said. Scaffolding partially blocks the sidewalk from view, and the construction manager said he and his colleagues didn't realize anything had happened until they saw emergency vehicles arrive. When we see the yellow bike, we automatically knew it was him, the construction manager said. And that actually raises a different point here, just about people's personal safety. And it's weird because I'm sure this guy had no reason to feel like he was being followed or that something like this would happen. But I have heard tips before, take different routes to work. Don't just do the same thing all the time. What is clear here is there are several people that were on his typical route to work, and they remembered him doing that time and time again. to the point where even a construction manager, which I don't know how long these guys have been at that particular site or on that particular job, but they had already recognized, hey, it's that doctor on the bright yellow bike driving by again. And where was this construction site exactly? I want to bring the map back up to just take a look at it real quick, because I believe it's pretty easy to spot. We're back on Main Street. And here's the Best Western, and it's actually right before the Best Western. It looks like there's another building that's being erected there. Of course, this image is from January 2017, so I'm making a little bit of an assumption, but I'd bet this building is probably still under some level of construction. There is some construction happening across the street, but it doesn't look like it's the type of place you'd have 500 guys working, just some exterior construction on existing buildings. This looks like the only new building that's kind of going up in the area. So, and we're assuming that the shooting happened just a little bit beyond that. So kind of understandable why the guys wouldn't have necessarily caught that. And of course, with all the equipment they're using and their ability to hear, that would have been obstructed anyway. Heavy.com has done a 5 fast facts. We've covered pretty much most of the information. His wife has released a statement. After spending his adult life saving and prolonging the lives of others, my talented husband, Dr. Mark Hausknecht, had his life prematurely ended. Her statement definitely calls for some form of gun control to be implemented. It's strange to me when we get into political discussions on the heels of a tragedy like this so quickly, but no doubt you're talking about a guy that was gunned down in broad daylight. People are going to bring up this argument. It's where we're at nowadays in terms of these types of discussions. She also wants to thank law enforcement, the medical community, and so many colleagues, patients, friends, and neighbors who have reached out to support us during this difficult time. Mark loved the city. To honor him, work hard, be responsible, patient, tolerant, and compassionate. I thought that was really well said, and I'm really happy that she ended with that. It's just, it's very sweet. Once again, gives you an idea of what type of person he was. And yeah, what a great idea to honor him. Let's be a little more responsible, a little more patient, and a little more tolerant. Detectives ask any residents near Southgate Boulevard at Travis Street to check their surveillance cameras between 8:40 a.m. and 9 a.m. and contact HPD Homicide at 713-308-3600 if they see the suspect on the bicycle. Just wanted to share that information in case any of you live in that particular area. If you have friends that live in that area, please share this video with them. We still need people. Obviously, the tip hasn't come yet. We don't have an arrest in this case, so we still need people to consider. If you have some type of home video surveillance, please go through that and keep what I was saying in mind too. This person might have driven that route a couple times. Look for the bike. Look for the bike in as much of the footage as you can. His clothes might have changed from time to time, but I would bet he was using that same bike. Let's take a look at some more video clips. This actually does look like it came from a home, possibly, maybe shot through a garage window or something. 8:50 a.m. according to that time. There we have a good clean image of the clothing he's wearing. They're saying khaki pants. In some of these images, looks kind of white to me, but they're saying khaki hat, khaki pants. And I've heard some variation between gray polo shirt or blue polo shirt. Olive green backpack is pretty clear, though. Some people were also looking at this image in particular. Oh, now it's got the play symbol on it. But they were wondering if there might be tattoos on his legs. I'm not necessarily seeing that. I think these are just digital artifacts. There's been no information released about anyone noticing tattoos on his body. I've just been seeing that in some comments on this case. So all kinds of different little video clips, little pieces of this guy, some of them worse than others in terms of quality, but this is the man we're looking for, that for some reason thought he needed to end the life of Dr. Hausknecht. And that's really one of the big questions in this whole mystery. What is going on that this guy needed to do that? Back at Houston.com. So far, Houston Crime Stoppers has received 25 tips in the case. I think with every video, we're getting clarity, we're getting better images, we're going to start honing in on this gentleman and make it harder for him to hide. Of course, I will have contact information in the description box down below in case you might have some information to contribute to this case. And at the bottom of the obituary for Dr. Hausknecht, they made several recommendations of different charities that you could support in his honor. So of those, I took a look at Doctors Without Borders, and I will be making a donation. Thank you to my wonderful Patreon and PayPal supporters to this charity in honor of Dr. Hausknecht. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to do that, helping me do that by supporting the channel. I truly, truly appreciate it. So what's going on with this case, everyone? Obviously, someone went to great lengths to not be discovered. It seems like there was a good level of planning that went on with this. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that backpack has something to do with the person not being found. My gut feeling is that there was a change of clothing. Do you guys think there's something else that could be in that backpack? Let's talk about that in the comments below. And what about motive? I've seen some comments where people are saying, look for a disgruntled patient or look for the family of a disgruntled patient, something along those lines. I'd like to think that investigators are looking into all that, although we're talking medical records at that point. There's a lot of privacy laws around that, so I don't know how far they could look into that type of information. Do you guys think it's someone that is maybe a family member that was told he couldn't help them or something along those lines, and this family member wanted to go out and seek revenge in some way? It's a tough case, and I wish the investigators all the luck in the world in terms of cracking this thing. I would love to do a case cracked episode on this sooner rather than later. All right, I'm back. It's Thursday, and we have several updates to talk about. First of all, starting with this picture here, the composite sketch, and the notes that we're looking for: white male, 5'9" to 5'10". They were estimating in his 20s or 30s, saying that he was thin but fit. Well, we actually, at least according to Houston police, we know who this man is now. Here is a picture of Joseph James Pappas. Now, when I first saw this picture, I was kind of like, what's going on? This guy isn't necessarily fit in the description. He's certainly older than 30. We've got a mustache on him. I don't know if he has this mustache currently. I would suspect not, based on what we're seeing here in the composite. But if you do look at these photos kind of back and forth, I think this composite is actually pretty strong. They got his nose pretty well. His jawline is a pretty strong match. So I think just the main thing is, I believe he probably shaved off his mustache from whenever this picture was taken. So what can we learn here? Well, first of all, we understand part of the motive, and this is all based on a tip that was actually called in to Houston police. And they have been very public about this information and what's been going on with this particular individual. So let's try to get you guys caught up on all that. Man with a grudge over mother's death sought in slaying of Houston doctor. Joseph James Pappas allegedly got on his 10-speed, so we now also know it is a 10-speed, Schwinn bicycle, rode to the Texas Medical Center and gunned down Houston cardiologist Mark Hausknecht in broad daylight. His mother died on the operating table under Hausknecht's care 2 decades ago. The 62-year-old may be suicidal and should be considered armed, according to Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo. When police searched his Westbury home early Wednesday, he already had given away many of his belongings. As a matter of fact, I'm going to jump to another article real quick that is one of his most important belongings. Here at Cron.com, the man accused of gunning down a prominent Houston doctor transferred the deed to his home the day before the death. Clerk records show that Joseph James Pappas, who is wanted in the death of cardiologist Mark Hausknecht, signed to convey his deed to an Ohio woman on July 19th. The deed transfer was officially delivered on July 23rd. With what I'm seeing here, the thought that he's suicidal is certainly an important consideration in this. And as a matter of fact, I think, I don't know if it was the same tipster, but police have gotten some information specifically from someone in contact with him that we're going to touch on about that aspect as well. On top of giving away his belongings, he left behind a gun and several holsters that were found when police actually went to his home. And they're also saying they did locate evidence tying him to the killing. Now, they're not specifically saying what that evidence is. We believe that this man is absolutely the killer, Acevedo said, declining to offer more details. As of late Wednesday, Pappas still had not been found. We need to find this guy, the chief said. This man is dangerous. This man is capable. This man has some skills. So we need to learn a bit more about Joseph James Pappas here. CBSnews.com reports that he is a former law enforcement officer. Joseph James Pappas, 62, recently tried to sell guns and ammunition online. The items were posted for sale 5 days after the fatal shooting. The items for sale included a semi-automatic rifle, a pistol, 2 bulletproof vests, and a bulletproof panel for a Ford Crown Victoria. One thing I'm really curious about is, were any of these items used in the actual crime? I'm really eyeing that pistol in particular. It was unclear if they are connected to the attack. The ads list a phone number that Pappas used on a real estate license and in court papers. Pappas most recently worked as a reserve officer in Harris County, Texas from 1995 to 2013, according to the station. Before that, he was a deputy constable from 1983 to 1995. So you've got a very long, 30-year career in law enforcement that he has. Now we have a little more information coming from the police chief. He said that the last person that heard from Pappas was in a Tuesday morning text message in which Pappas wrote that he was going to kill himself. So if his actions weren't speaking loudly enough, we now know that there's a text message that's being very direct about this possibility. And jumping over to ABC 13, the family of Dr. Hausknecht has released a new statement. The Hausknecht family is very grateful for the diligent hard work and professionalism of the Houston Police Department and all the other agencies, organizations, and countless individuals who have contributed to the identification of Joseph James Pappas as the suspect in the murder of Dr. Mark Hausknecht. The family further urges the public to focus on the photo of the suspect and other information about the suspect released by HPD Chief Acevedo yesterday. They ask for the public's continued support of law enforcement's efforts in finding and apprehending this dangerous and armed individual as soon as possible. The family urges that if you know anything about the possible whereabouts of the suspect, please contact Houston Police Department as soon as possible. So I am keeping the contact information in the description box below. I keep checking. According to what I'm seeing, he has not been found yet. Obviously, with what we're talking about here in terms of him giving things away, trying to sell off some stuff, giving away his home, and then having that text message about him possibly wanting to end his life, there's a chance that when he is found, that he's not going to be alive. But there's also a chance that he will be found and taken into custody alive. And quite honestly, that's the outcome that I'm hoping for here. And that's why I'm leaving the contact information down there, not just for finding him, but if you have information about him or his actions around anything to do with this case, I believe that the investigators are going to want that information. I think they're going to want to make sure that any case brought against him is as strong as possible. So I'm leaving all that information down there as well. It's really a tough thing because we're already talking about a tragedy that's going on here. And quite honestly, another tragedy. Now we're learning about this man that lost his mother 2 decades ago. And unfortunately, for some reason, he felt like he needed some type of payback for that. And now he has killed the doctor that was trying to save his mother's life. It's really hard to get my head around this and trying to understand what's going on here. I also wouldn't be very surprised if we learn that Mr. Pappas might be facing some type of sickness of his own. It just seems kind of strange to me that he would sit on this for 20 years and all of a sudden now is the time for him to, seemingly get some type of revenge for what happened to his mother. I believe we're going to find out that there's some type of time trigger that kind of forced things, at least from his perspective here, assuming that we do get any type of comments from him at all. So the big question at this point is, where is he? And are we going to find him alive? That's really where this case is at this point. I did want to touch on one other article I found here at the New York Daily News. Revenge killings against U.S. doctors are rare, but Mark Hausknecht's murder highlights grim truths about violence against health workers. Dr. Michael Davidson in 2005 was shot twice outside his office in Boston. He had treated the gunman's mother, who died from complications just 2 months ahead of that fatal shooting. So very, very similar situation to what we're talking about going on here. And then it's talking about another occurrence last August where 79-year-old Stanwood Elkus was found guilty in the murder of urologist Ronald Gilbert, who allegedly botched an operation that left the retired barber with erectile dysfunction. So a few cases that kind of show that, but then we also get this quote here: such events garner tremendous media attention, but are actually quite rare, according to Dr. James Phillips, and noted in his article, Workplace Violence Against Healthcare Workers in the United States. However, even though it sounds that way, this next statement kind of threw me for a loop. According to the most recent data from the World Health Organization, up to 38% of health workers have said they've suffered physical violence at some point in their careers, with many more saying they've been threatened or exposed to verbal aggression. So I don't know. It sounds like this article is kind of from one point saying, this doesn't happen all that often. Here's the few cases we can say that kind of line up with this. But then to hear that 38% of health workers have suffered some form of physical violence at some point in their career just really seems high. It's a pretty interesting article. Of course, I'll have it in the sources down below. It also talks about the difference between this type of violence happening against healthcare workers in America versus abroad, which apparently overseas, there are some very big problems with healthcare workers being attacked. I don't know, guys. It feels like one of those cases where we have two wrongs, and I don't know if that really makes a right. So, like I said before, I'm hoping that he's taken into custody alive. I'm hoping that he will face justice for what he has done through the proper channels, through the system. But I'm kind of questioning if we're going to see that outcome because of the steps that he took leading up to this. I also really, in some way, want to say thank you to that tipster that made that phone call. And the other people, I think I'm getting the feeling, they're not being real clear about this, but I'm getting the feeling that several people had little pieces of this puzzle. This is a bicycle that this guy used regularly. I'm thankful to everyone that saw the coverage of this case as it was happening and tried to help on this. It's amazing when people band together in something like this. So maybe not the brain scratch you were all hoping for, but I do feel better knowing that at least police know who they're looking for. It's just still a question of how this is all going to shake out. So if I have any updates on that, I will certainly post another video to the channel to let all of you know. Now I'm going to kick you back over to Wednesday's John so we can continue with the comment review. Before we get to the comments, I want to thank PayPal donors Debbie Williams from London. Thank you so much, Debbie. And Vanessa Lowe from Australia, contributing to help keep me here doing what I love doing through PayPal donations, which you can make very easily now at the new lordandarts.com. Thank you both for doing that. And it's now time to talk about comments from last week's episode of Brain Scratch. Of course, that was the Lauren Agee investigation and the interview we did with Sheila Wysocki. Let's start with a comment from Crystal Barnes. When my drunk neighbor isn't mowing his yard in a Speedo, God help me, he's wearing American flag shorts. I swear he owns about 40 pairs. Yeah, they're pretty common. Thank you guys for the work you do. And I saw many comments. I just wanted to touch on that. You guys were very clear. The American flag shorts are certainly common. One thing I'll have to reconnect with Sheila on is she was actually interviewed by Gray Hughes. I checked out that interview as well, and they showed a picture of shorts that he was wearing, and I don't think they were American flag. I think they were Pabst Blue Ribbon logos with red lines. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I got to check back with her on that and make sure. Are we even certain that these are truly American flag shorts that he was wearing at that time, or was it a blue beer logo with red stripes? Now we have a comment from Brittany B. Only 8 minutes in, and I can already tell Sheila is full of tenacity in the best way possible. Thanks for this interview, John. I totally agree, Brittany. I think that Sheila is coming from the right place. I really appreciate that she takes on some of the toughest cases that I've seen, and I've now reviewed hundreds of cases on this channel. She doesn't shy away. She really jumps in, and there's something about her. She has this enthusiasm about being able to solve it that just doesn't stop. It's like there's no end to it. And I think that's necessary, because I'm sure some of these investigations, some of them might go on months, some of them could go on years. And more about Sheila from Kim Brody. Thank God for Sheila. The cops wrapped this up without looking into this. Lauren did not deserve to lose her life, and the people she was with have to be broken. I have faith Sheila Wysocki will get to the truth. Thanks for seeing that in her as well. Many of you seem to really appreciate Sheila, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring her on the channel. It's part of the reason why I think I struck up a friendship with her so quickly. I could just tell from very early on her heart and focus are absolutely in the right place for helping in cases like this. And she believes in you guys. That is such a big part of it. We don't hear that all that much from law enforcement. She is really looking to engage you through the podcast, through doing these types of interviews. She knows she needs help, and she's more than willing to ask for it. I wish we had better contact like that coming from law enforcement in some of these cases. Moving on to a comment from Saffron Sugar, who has been a friend of the channel for a long time, hoping to be helpful. Mother didn't know the difference between the larynx and the throat. And by the way, guys, I know that I got the pronunciation wrong. That Y just moves all around that word in my head. I can't describe why. It does happen occasionally, and you know what? In a video that's that long, I'll take some mispronunciations here and there. But back to Saffron's comment. The throat is the entire front of the neck. This includes the pharynx, larynx, pronounced larynx rather than larynx. I could be getting them wrong now, and I still don't know, Saffron, but I'm doing my best. Trachea and the esophagus. The trachea you breathe through, the esophagus you swallow through. In cases of strangulation, damage is often seen in both. The larynx is at the front of the throat above the trachea. Esophagus is behind it, closer to the spine. I teach medical people how to do endotracheal intubation, and this definitely can be confusing. The hyoid bone, free-floating bone, is often broken in cases of strangulation. This may seem like nitpicking. However, it was pointed out that non-medical people making medical statements can make things confusing. Getting the facts straight can help other people to speculate on what might have happened. Thank you so much, Saffron. I really appreciate you taking the time to include all of that detail and to help educate all of us. That's a big part of why I do this channel. I need your guys' help too, and thank you so much for providing that. On to our final comment from NZK. The fact that no one took a video of her supposed cliff jump is very weird to me. I completely agree. I don't know how that happened. And the whole story about the cliff jump, it bothers me because it's this aspect that comes up that could potentially explain some of the types of injuries that her body wound up with. And what bothers me is the intent of that story. If she didn't really do the cliff jump, then the intent of that story is to deceive us about the autopsy results. If she did do that cliff jump, then we have to believe that despite the fact that she did something kind of risky and had a bad result from it, the story is that she almost knocked herself out, basically, or that she might have knocked herself out for a short period of time. Then later that night, she decides to climb back up to the same cliff and lay in a hammock that is hanging out over the edge off that cliff. It doesn't make sense to me logically that someone that has been hurt by a certain mechanism, jumping off a cliff or falling off a cliff, is then going to climb back up that same cliff, close their eyes, and go to sleep while they're hanging in a hammock over the edge of the cliff. The logic completely befuddles me. I don't get it. So to your point, the fact that there is no video, at least a picture of her jumping off the cliff, is very, very strange. I don't know if it really happened. I'd be very surprised if it actually happened. just because we do know that if nothing else, she did go back up there. We do know that at some point she was sitting in that hammock because we have a picture of it. I guess if we consider the possibility that she didn't sleep in the hammock after the accident, that maybe she was still brave enough to go back up the cliff, but she wound up sleeping on the ground somewhere, or possibly in the tent, which I think is something that I'm really considering, especially after talking to Sheila about all this. Possibly she did the cliff jump. Possibly no one took a video, and she did go back up there and she slept up there, maybe not in the hammock. So we're still getting to the point where someone is lying about where she was that night. And for me personally, I'm wondering if it has to do with the point that they want to keep her out of the tent. They don't want people to consider that she actually was in the tent. I don't know, guys. I know we're going to have another video on this soon. I've already been speaking to Gray Hughes about it. We're even talking about the possibility of bringing Sheila back for that conversation. So all three of us can discuss the triangle mark and other aspects of this case. So if you guys think that'll be a good idea, let me know about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Brain Scratch. I hope you guys have a great Friday, a wonderful weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new Case Cracked here on the Lord and Arts channel.